Welcome to the Mindful Mama Movement podcast. I'm Shannon Kinney-Dew, creator of A Free Spirit Life.
And I'm Ashley Walburn, owner of Home Holistic. And together we are bringing back the Mindful Mama Movement podcast.
Mindful mothering is about nurturing yourself while you nurture others. It's about consciously awakening to your inner wisdom, strength, power, and peace as a mother in this changing world.
From discovering your newborn to accepting and loving the people who've left your nest, our movement is inspiring mothers to be authentic and to live empowered lives.
We're so happy you're here. Hey there, welcome to episode 36 of the Mindful Mama Movement podcast. Ashley and I wanted to give you a quick warning before this episode to let you know that there are curse words in the show today. If you have little ears listening, you might want to listen at a different time. In today's show, we are bringing back one of our favorite past guests. Carla Naumburg is a social worker and an author of the new book, You Are Not a Shitty Parent: How to Practice Self-Compassion and Give Yourself a Break. Let's just go right into the show because we have so much good information to share with you. It's lively, it's funny, it's authentic, it's raw, and her book is something that I would recommend all moms getting. We really need to treat ourselves with tender, loving kindness these days. And Carla talks a lot about that and why we suffer from shitty parent syndrome, how to treat ourselves with more compassion, and how to give ourselves a break. I can't wait for you to listen to this show, and then make sure to check out our show notes so that you can get a copy of You Are Not a Shitty Parent. If you're listening to this episode at the time that it comes out live, you can enter for your chance to win a signed copy of this book. And you can go to mindfulmamamovementpodcast.com for all of those details. And to go ahead and purchase Carla's book or to learn more about her, visit her website. It's Carla, C-A-R-L-A, Naumburg, Naumburg.com. This conversation is so good. Let's just get right to it. Enjoy. We are so happy that you're here. We just dove right in, started recording. We want to warn you all that we are going to do a little cursing in this, or maybe a lot. Who knows? We don't know where this is going to take us, but Carla has this new book. We're going to talk all about it. Carla was also in episode 21. 5 years ago, we recorded episode 21. We're having her back because she's amazing. You are going to love talking about her new book. Seriously. So Carla, for those people listening who don't know who you are, give us a little heads up on what you do in this world with the work and what stage of motherhood you're in.
Yeah, so I'm so happy to be back here with you guys. And
Woo-hoo!
Let's see. So I'm a mom. I have two daughters who are 12 and 14. So we're like neck deep in middle school puberty land, which isn't as bad as I thought. Of course, now that I've said that, the universe is going to come give me like a major smackdown, but we're doing okay. And I am a clinical social worker by training and practice, and I'm also a writer. So I've written 4 parenting books, and the most recent one that we're here to talk about today is called You Are Not a Shitty Parent: How to Practice Self-Compassion and Give Yourself a Break. Because if there was like one gift or message I could send out into the world, which I am not a send things out into the world kind of person, but apparently I am now, it would be self-compassion. And when I first started learning about self-compassion, I think I threw up in my mouth a little bit because I was like, that's gross. And like, who wants that? And then I actually started practicing it, and I was like, oh, this is actually really, really useful and helpful and makes everything in my life better. So then I wrote a book about it.
What sparked the title? Let's go right to that.
I'll tell you what sparked the title, actually. So for a long time, I myself would literally think I'm such a shitty mom, right? So I was thinking that for a very long time, and that's awful. But about 2 years ago, maybe it was even before the pandemic, because I think the kids, it was when the kids were still going into the school building before the pandemic. But my daughter was in 4th grade, and a good friend of mine whose son is in the same class had sent me a string of text messages talking about how her son had been like crumpling up all his math worksheets and shoving them in the bottom of his backpack, and they were all like crumpled and torn, and it was a mess. And then she ended this string of texts with a text that said, "I'm such a shitty mom." And I was like, what is happening? Why? My fourth grader was also like, her binder organization system, your listeners can't see my air quotes around organization, is horrifying, and it makes me break out in hives. But because of my self-compassion practice, I no longer held myself responsible for my daughter's horrifying behavior. And I certainly didn't think I was a shitty mom because she crumpled up her math papers. And so when my friend sent me that text, like, it really was like a record scratching in my brain, being like, why does she think that? What happened there? And that's kind of what led to the title of the book, because I just feel like so many of us these days have this idea in our brains that we're shitty parents. And I just wanted to get right to the point. And also, the profanity is because, well, A, I'm a sweary person, but B, I wanted parents to know that I'm not going to judge them, that I'm hopefully they get that I'm trying to be funny, and that it's just like we're sitting down and chatting about how you could stop thinking you're a shitty parent, because you're not.
Well, I think that's why I love your book so much, and that you use that language. This is so funny. So I was having one of those shitty parent moments just over the last 2 days. So it was no coincidence that I had your book in my lap. My husband came in, gave me a hug. He's like, "Oh, I'm not a shitty parent." I'm like, "Oh, I really needed to hear that," as he's reading your title. I called my friend last night after just having a really hard day with the kids. And she's just one of those friends that just tells you like it is. And she's like, "You are putting so much pressure on yourself." And I know we do that naturally, but just hearing her say that and see that really like stopped me. But what was funny about it is she's like, "I'm loving this language that I was just like, F this and that. And usually when we talk, it's like morning walks and I'm like out in nature and I'm feeling good about my day. This was the end of a horrible day. I was exhausted. That's what I love about your book, is it feels like we're having that support from a real, true friend. And that's what we need so much. So thank you.
We see, like this is what Shannon and I do. We spend a lot of time with moms and supporting moms. And I think everybody that are kind of our generation and younger, for some reason, have that, or that's what I hear all the time. Like, "Oh my God, I'm going to be a shitty mom," or "Am I going to be a shitty mom?" And I wonder a little bit, and I don't know if you have any insight into it, like, what is different? Did our mothers think that? I don't think my mom did. I don't think that she one time has thought that she's a shitty mom or worried about it. She just did it. And that we are all like, "Oh my God, my kid didn't turn in his math assignment," or "He's been hoarding it and shoving it in the bottom of his backpack," whatever it is. That, like, why are we more accountable than maybe the mothers who came before us? What are your thoughts on that?
So, yeah, I mean, when I've talked to people, moms from previous generations, like in our parents' generation, or even in my husband's grandmother is still alive. She's 99, and I've talked to her about the book, and she's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." Like, she can't relate to it. And I think there's a few things going on. One is, although parents have always cared about their children, I don't want to say that they haven't. Our generation is the first generation where we are talking very specifically about the importance of our relationship with our kids. Like, this wasn't really part of the pop culture before, partially because there hadn't been studies on like attachment theory, which is not attachment parenting. That's a different thing. There hadn't really been all these studies about it, and there weren't parenting experts, right? This wasn't a thing. Like, we sort of had Dr. Spock. There was like one book written by one white dude, and that was all there was. And now all of a sudden, like in the pop culture, people are talking about the importance of your relationship with your kid. And if you screw up your relationship with your kid, you're going to like doom them forever and they'll never be in a healthy relationship. And it feels like a huge amount of pressure. So I think that's one thing, is that like having children and being a parent has gone from just sort of this biological imperative that we all just sort of did. And hopefully you kept your kid alive enough to like work the farm or take over the family store or whatever it was. And now it's this thing that is like I don't want to say a task, but it's like a life endeavor that we're supposed to get right. I don't know what it means to get parenting right, but I'm still supposed to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing is that many women, especially, and I think what the research has found is that these are women who tend to live in bigger cities, maybe have more education, are postponing parenthood, right? They're having children later. And so instead of the expectation that many women had for many generations, and many women in many parts of the world still do, that you just sort of have a baby, like hopefully you have a partner, right? But most of the world is totally homophobic, so we're going to assume you're married to a man, and that you have a partner, this husband, and you're going to get married and your job is to take care of the baby. So maybe you get some higher education, maybe you have a career, but it's something like teaching or nursing or whatever, that there's already this expectation that you're in a caregiving role, and then you sort of move into motherhood. It's just what you do. But now what we've got is this generation of women who have made the choice, for whatever reason, to delay becoming mothers. And so then they go and they become professionals, and they're like super competent professionals, right? And they learn that if you don't know how to do something, you find the right mentor, you read the right books, you go to school, you do all these things, and then eventually you are successful. So then at some point, these women, and I'm part of this. I mean, my daughters were born when I was like 30 and 31, so not a whole lot later, but I definitely had this experience of being a professional before I became a mother. So then you go into motherhood, and we all bring that mentality with us. So we're like, oh, if something's not right, if my child is unhappy, if my child is not well, if my child is not meeting the developmental milestones, then I just need to find the right expert, or read the right book, or listen to the right podcast, and then I'm going to be able to fix that. Mm-hmm. And sadly for all of us, like type A freak out overachievers, and I do mean myself and some other people.
You're just staring right at us. We get it.
No, yeah. I'm not. I'm literally not intending. If we were publishing this video, people would see that at that moment I was like staring off into space. No, I'm for sure me. Then we try to take this into parenting, and so how do we know if we're successful or not? Well, successful means our children are basically healthy and happy and totally achieving at the highest level for everything. And guess what? Not all our children are healthy, and it's not our damn fault. And we can't guarantee our children are going to be happy, because happiness is an emotion, and we can't control emotions, not in ourselves and not in anybody else. And not all of our children are going to succeed at the highest level, because nobody does all the time. It's not a thing. So now, instead of being like, oh, parenting is messy and hard and actually really sucks sometimes, no matter how much we love it, which doesn't make for great like Instagram and TikTok content, what we're told is you better fix the problem or have a damn good story about how hard you tried. And if you don't have that, then you suck as a parent. And I call BS on all of that.
I love that so much. You said in your book, blaming ourselves for not fixing the unfixable problems of life and parenting.
Sometimes I think about my great grandmother who was in the Oklahoma land rush, and I obviously never met her, but we have this picture of her, and she was like this old wrinkly pissed off bullfrog of a woman, and we have this picture of her like sitting on this like porch holding a shotgun, and I'm like, oh my god, she's my hero. And I just know if someone who met she's this like Annie woman, Oakley, right, she's like a fat angry Annie Oakley, she's totally my spirit animal. But I know if somebody had gone to this woman and been like, you should be happy, and if you're not happy, something's wrong with you, she would have been like, what the F are you talking about? This world is not a happy place, and it's okay if I'm unhappy. Like, she would have thought it was freaking bizarre, right? And so I think about her sometimes, and I'm like, yeah, life is hard, and that doesn't mean we're doing it wrong. It just means we're living a life, and life is hard. How's that for really cheery and fun?
Yeah. Do you remember how you described chaos in your book?
I think so. So look, I think we parents think that chaos is a bad thing. That if we're parenting right, like everything will be super neat and orderly, and we'll know where everything is, and our kids will put on their shoes the first time we ask them to, which I think is like actually literally impossible.
For real.
And that if there is chaos, it means we're doing things wrong.
Yes.
Right? That's how I felt for a long time. And as I was sort of researching and thinking about it more, I was like, nope. Chaos is just part of the deal. And the more like parts you introduce into a system, and by parts, I mean other living beings who actually don't have prefrontal cortexes, which is the part of their brain that helps them be organized and thoughtful and plan ahead and not freak out when there's peas or touching their noodles on their plate or whatever. Like the more you add these little immature, and I don't mean immature in like a judgmental way, I just mean literally they're not matured yet because of their age. when you have these little immature things without prefrontal cortexes into your home, like chaos is just going to happen. And it's not a sign that we're doing anything wrong. It's just the deal.
Yes.
And if you don't
There's
like
something,
chaos at all, like you shouldn't have kids,
yeah,
really.
for real. If I would have known how chaotic it was going to be, I don't know. I truly had no idea. I don't know, like that every single meal time was going to be a fight, or nobody was going to ever pick up their shoes. I talk about shoes a lot in my life. I wish I would have not cared that my house was a mess. I had a really beautiful experience when I was really overwhelmed and my kids were 2, 3, 4, and 12. Nope, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, something like that.
I literally just had a minor heart attack hearing those ages. So
For
I'm
real.
just hearing about it makes me break out in a sweat.
It makes me break out in a sweat. When I see people with a bunch of kids, like 4 kids, I'm always like, oh, that looks crazy. And I guess I did it. But this friend came over to do something. I remember her bringing me a mocha. And at the time, there weren't, I know, I love her. She was from Australia and she had the best accent. But she brought me a mocha. And at the time, there were no, in Kansas City at least, drive-through coffee shops.
It's horrible.
And like, I wasn't going to unload 4 kids and get a coffee. And so having like a specialty drink, I remember exactly what it tasted like. I remember her handing it to me. I know. But my house was a mess. And in my mind, there was a lot of laundry and kind of poopy diapers all over the place. I'm sure there wasn't, but it was bad, And I was like, oh my God, Liz, I'm so embarrassed. I'm so embarrassed. And she goes, nobody cares. Nobody cares. And
I love her.
And I said to her, my mom's house was always picked up and like, this is a mess. And she said, you don't remember what your house looked like when you were a toddler, Ashley. And she said, nobody would even know if your kids went to school with dirty jeans on. That is one of the most important conversations of my life.
Right?
That nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
And you don't remember what your mom's house looked like when you were 2.
And let's also talk about the fact that it is possible that your mom's house was spotless because what did we call moms who stayed home with their children back then? They were not called stay-at-home moms. They were called housewives.
Mm-hmm.
Their primary job was taking care of the house and making sure that it all looked nice and that they were ready for their husband when he came home or whatever. Mm-hmm. And like the kids were out roaming the streets or like stuck in a playpen or whatever. Like,
I love the roaming the streets, and I wish my kids got it more, especially my 18, 19.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's our
I feel like the roaming the streets fantasy, it is used against parents to be like, you're too overprotective. If you were chiller parents, your kids would be roaming the streets. It's better for them. Okay, let's look at the difference. Back in the good old days when kids were roaming the streets, there was more often than not a parent in the home. Usually the mom, right? Let's just be real. Not always, but usually. And even if there wasn't a parent in every home on the street or in the neighborhood, there were parents in most of the homes. Mm-hmm. So you get the kid
You could knock
home,
on a door and there was a mom there.
Right. You're like, go roam the streets. But now in most homes, if there are 2 parents, they both work. And there is A, no way to get the kid home so they can roam the streets. And B, there's nobody around. So like, where are the kids going to go if they need something? What's the safety net, right? So what parents are stuck doing is signing their kids up for aftercare or making sure they're in a sport or making sure they're staying for after school or whatever it is. It's not because the parents are uptight and freaking out, although I will say that, the 80s and the like real fear around kidnapping. Remember, we all grew up with that. I remember like my parents were so freaking scared I was going to get kidnapped because of America's Most Wanted and all that panic.
Face on a milk carton kind of thing.
Right, face on the milk, right? So yes, there is part of that because we were all raised with that, but a bigger part of it is that structurally, our society does not support families with children. It doesn't support working parents. Mm-hmm. But then, this is my other little rant, we are taking individual responsibility for societal problems.
Ooh, say that again, please.
We parents, and especially moms, are taking individual responsibility for societal problems. If you are sad that your kid is not roaming the street, that's not your fault. It's because in the vast majority of the US culture, and I can't speak to other countries, our neighborhoods aren't set up. The parents aren't home we aren't set up, supported in our work environments to be home so that we can kick the kids out of the house and be like, go play. This happened more in some families during COVID because parents were actually home and outdoors felt a little more safe, right? So, but in general, this isn't our fault. It's not our
I
fault.
think that is so important for you to state that, because so what I'm noticing, and we talked that, we talked to you pre-COVID, and then we all went through COVID, and now we just know that so much has changed for we'll just speak for moms right now, for parents. But I think when we had that COVID like stop moment, so many women I'm noticing saw something that was missing, saw something that
Their hair was missing because it was all falling out. Oh, sorry, because we're all
their youth.
tired.
Okay, well, yes, exactly.
Sorry,
all of
go
it,
ahead.
so much, right? But then trying to hold on to that and still take on the same speed that we're all in, all the same plates that we're all, trying to keep up. It's just unmanageable. So I feel like just hearing it, and I think your book gives us that permission to just exhale and to really just, support each other as we're maneuvering something that's just so new.
I just feel like every mom I know is tired all the time. Like, whether you are a mom with kids in the home or your kids are out of the home, whether you are a mom who works outside the home or you're working from home or you don't work at all and your whole time job is being there with the kids. I don't know any moms right now who are like, yeah, I'm okay. And I just feel like the level of exhaustion and fatigue is beyond. We're all just fried. I just look at my husband every night at like 7 o'clock and I'm like, I'm just always tired. Yeah. And I am so freaking privileged. Like, I have a roof over my head. We have health insurance. We have access to good health care. My kids are in a good school. I work from home. I have a job in addition to writing, and my job has always been a from home job. And so like I'm so privileged, and I think about that every day, and I'm so grateful for it every day, and I'm still so freaking tired. So then I think about women and moms who have to work outside the home, who have jobs where they're on their feet all day, who like don't have partners. I have a partner he's amazing. And to those moms, I don't have advice for you. Like, I don't know what to say, because I don't want you to think it's your fault. I don't want you to think you should be doing something better. We're just stuck in these unsustainable situations. So all I have to offer is like, here's this practice of self-compassion. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that, because you talk that self-compassion is kind of the secret sauce that we can really like lean into. And I love the simplicity of it. I love how you talk about it. So what, in your own words, is self-compassion, and how can we apply that to our mothering in this day and age?
So I want to acknowledge researchers Kristen Neff and Christopher Germer, because they were really pioneers in sort of bringing a Western eye to self-compassion, which I think is something that's been practiced in other cultures for a long time, but not so much in the West until recently. And it's just the idea that we A, notice when we're suffering, and B, sort of adjust how we respond to ourselves and our environment when we notice that suffering. And hopefully by now it will be abundantly clear to your listeners that when I talk about adjustment, I mean being kinder to ourselves in a variety of ways. And this is a real difference from how most of us behave most of the time, because mostly when we're suffering, either we just kind of brush past and ignore it because we've got dinner to get on the table and a dentist appointment to make and, a mother-in-law to call back and whatever it is, and we don't actually acknowledge what's happening. And B, when things feel really hard, we often blame ourselves, right?
Right.
If we were better parents, if we were better moms, if we were better humans, things wouldn't be so chaotic. The shit wouldn't be hitting the fan, whatever it is. And so this is really about flipping that script and just noticing our suffering and treating ourselves with kindness when it happens. And there's a few different ways to do that.
I love that. Going back to what Ashley was saying about her friend who brought over the latte,
Yes.
And thinking about in your
It was a mocha.
It was a mocha.
That's right.
I'm
Totally.
going to be thinking about that mocha for a long time. That's amazing.
But it's also, you're kind of like your example with Compassionate Courtney, and you talk about, the simple act of compassion for others. And in particular, I really loved your section on, unsolicited advice, and how we feel sometimes this desire. There are those of us who kind of want to fix everything. And can you give us, just share a little bit about why what this person did, Courtney? It's a simple act, and yet it's a way that we can all support each other, and how we can lean in on being compassionate without feeling we have to take it on or fix another person.
I feel like this story is not dissimilar from Ashley's friend with the mocha. So when I was writing this book, I posted on Facebook and I asked my community there, what's one of the kindest or most compassionate things anyone has ever done for you in the context of parenting? And one of my friends shared that she was going to a group for new mothers. This was, years ago before the pandemic when we could still like gather with our babies. So she was going to a new mothers group and she had a colicky baby. And as anyone who's had a colicky baby knows, it's horrible. It's unsustainable. And a woman in the group said to her, like, I know how hard this is. I've had a colicky baby. Here's my phone number. You call me day or night and we'll talk. And my friend put that number on her refrigerator and she never called her, right? Because she didn't really know this woman. But the idea that there was someone out there who was like, I know what you're going through. I know how awful it is. I'm clearly not judging you for it. And I will be here to listen to you, to get curious about your situation, to be supportive. It was such a kind thing to do. And it was just this like point of connection for my friend. Just seeing that number on her fridge really got her through some very hard times. And I think in those moments,
like a lifeline that, it's I know I got this. It's a little lifeline that she didn't even know existed.
Yeah. And I feel like it's a symbol, a reminder to her. Maybe I'm reading into this. So Courtney, if you're listening, just tell me. But I could also imagine it being a symbol, like just such a reminder, you're not alone and this isn't your fault, right? Because I feel like so much, and this is a huge part of compassion, which Kristen Neff calls common humanity, because so much of the way we torture ourselves is by believing that we're completely alone in whatever we're struggling with, right? And that is so, so painful on such a deep level to believe that. And I remember when my kids were little and I was yelling at them a lot. I somehow managed to convince myself that I was the only parent who was yelling. And I remember literally reading a New York Times article talking about how we are a generation of yellers and previous generations would hit their kids or spank them like my dad would spank me. It wasn't because he was awful. It's because that's what he was raised with, right? And this generation, we don't hit our kids, but we scream at them. And I remember I read that article and then literally was like, but I don't think so. I still think I'm the only one, right? Yeah. And so anytime something can remind us that we're not alone, whether we just remind ourselves of that, right? Or a friend shows up with a mocha or somebody gives you their phone number or whatever it is, that is a hugely compassionate act and it really makes a difference.
I remember I support moms and those small groups and mommy baby yoga, and I have for 16 years or something. And I remember two instances that really stick out for me. One was a mom that had just had twins. She was 46 years old, first babies. She'd wanted babies for 15 years of infertility, finally had them, and she was hating it. Very overwhelmed. She would come with her babies. I would take one, and we're going around doing a check-in. And she was like, I hate it. These kids won't sleep. I need help. I mean, she was just like on the edge. And every mom in the room started sharing. I thought it was going to be easier than this. And that she shared that. And everybody then started talking about their truth. Like, this isn't easy. And in that moment, I remember thinking, God, I would have loved this when my babies were babies.
Yeah.
And my second son was colicky, and I had visions of putting a pillow over his face. I didn't want him to die. I wanted him to shut up. And I remember thinking in those moments, and this is really my truth, that I'm one sleepless night and one less supportive husband away from doing the really scary thing. And those moms in that moment, in that class, that they got, I'm not the only one.
And I love how you just like exhaled when you said that, Ashley, because that's what it feels like, right? It feels like, oh my gosh, I can breathe again.
Yes.
Yeah. And God, I think when there was a bunch of stay-at-home moms, those moms had coffee together, and that there was more community where, moms today are often dropping their kids off at daycare, headed to work, coming home, making dinner, thinking of,
And we're also like scrolling and seeing all these messages that all these other experts have 5 tips to this or that, you know, and it's like you're constantly inundated.
They've got the cutest nursery you ever saw.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Who cares?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That it's not, parenting for me is a lot of work, and it's the most generous thing that we'll ever do. I'm so grateful I get to do it, but I also know it's an act of giving.
Yes.
And generosity. And I have a good friend that shoots it straight with me, and she said to me a few weeks ago, you know, there's a lot of people that wish they could do this hard thing with their kid. And it was such an important reboot for me. I could bawl that, you know, whatever my kid was going through that I was struggling with, that reminding ourselves we get to do this hard thing. And when it doesn't go well, I'm not a shitty parent.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like there was so much in what you just said, Ashley. I'm trying to process it all. I just want to say thank you. Like, I'm imagining, first of all, both of you are creating this amazing context with this podcast where we get to speak our truths, right? And other women get to hear them. But also, Ashley, for you creating that space in a room where someone could come in and just say one of the hardest things any of us have to say, which is like, parenting sucks right now. And I don't love it, which is not to say we don't love our kids, but it's like,
but this is hard.
Oh my God, so hard. And I'm like having these moments of remembering when my daughters, you know, they're 20 months apart. So you guys know how this is.
Yeah.
And they were so little, and my husband was traveling a lot. And if you are a parent who, like me, was not raised in the kind of childhood that you want to recreate, you know, here's the thing. Like, it's like, okay, you're trying to figure out which way to go. You're looking at a map with a million roads, and all you know is, I don't want to take that road. But you don't know which road to take. And this brings me back to Shannon. The other thing that you said that I wanted to mention is, right now, I feel like another thing that makes parenting feel hard is that it used to be that we would compare ourselves to the parents in our community, right? And for many people, this sucked, because if you were the only person of color, or you were the only Jew or Muslim, or you were the only gay person, or you whatever, then you felt very isolated, right? That was not awesome. However, the benefits is that, for the most part, the people in your community are dealing with like the same context and the same snowstorm and the same, or at least similar kind of situations.
Right.
And now, thanks to social media and the internet, we're comparing ourselves to the entire freaking world.
To the Kardashians.
We turn to it when we're already feeling low, usually.
Right, we're already feeling like crap. So then we pick up. So 2 things happen. Well, I remember I was in a yoga class, actually, Ashley, and I don't know why, but I know I was in a yoga class because it was good for me. I liked it. But for some reason, in this yoga class, I'm in like downward dog or baby or whatever you do in yoga. And I started thinking about Gwyneth Paltrow. This was, I think, before Goop. Like, I think she had kids, but it was before Goop. And I was like, oh my God. I just read some article that Gwyneth Paltrow had fresh fish delivered to her house every day. And I was like, fuck, that's what a good mom does. I am such a shitty mom. Like, I don't have fresh fish delivered to my house. I don't even know. I don't cook. I don't know how to cook fish. I don't even, like, if I went to the grocery store, I wouldn't know how to buy a fish. Like, I wouldn't know how to order a fish. Like, do you order, like, how much fish do you need? Like, and my mind was spiraling, and I was like, I suck because I am not Gwyneth Paltrow. And so then all of a sudden, in this stupid yoga class, which was not stupid at all, but my brain was being stupid in it, I am literally comparing to myself to a person on the planet who has essentially unlimited resources and support, right? And so there's that aspect of social media that I think really screws us up. We're no longer just comparing ourselves to our neighbors, who also, like, thank God my neighbors also have not raked their leaves. So as I look out the window, I'm like, oh, I'm not the only jerk who hasn't raked their leaves yet this fall. Thank you. Like, whereas Gwyneth Paltrow's leaves are probably raked, I'm sure. But sorry, Gwyneth.
Somebody's doing it. Yeah.
Somebody's doing it. It's not me. But the other thing that happens on social media, Shannon, which you mentioned, is that there are these lovely little memes that are like, here's how to have a good relationship with your kids in 5 easy steps. 1, resolve all your own unhealed trauma. 2, like, identify all your feelings and know what you're feeling at every moment, so you don't unfortunately like feel something inappropriate around your kids. And I'm like, hold on, like, record scratch. Can we go back to step number 1?
Right.
That is a lifetime of work that most of us never even get the opportunity to do, because it's so damn hard to get a good therapist these days. And even if you can get a good therapist, you probably can't afford to pay for them, or you don't have any childcare to let you go to the freaking sessions. So I feel like there's all these memes around that are like, just be able to identify your own feelings and stay calm at any moment. And if you can totally do that, you'll be great. And I'm like, yeah, if I could have done that, I would have done that. Thanks. So,
Mhm.
and the problem is it makes it seem like this is a thing that is
Right. Fixable.
doable, that's fixable
Mhm.
for like normal people who can't just go live in an ashram or whatever and then like for a year and I don't know what you do, eat rice and broccoli and meditate and come back and be fine. Like,
Mhm.
and it makes me crazy. And then I throw a little rant and then my daughters are like, Mommy, maybe you need to step away from your phone. And I'm like, you need to step away from your phone. And then that ends well.
Yeah.
And then
Turn off your
mommy
Snapchat.
is back. Well, one thing, going back to my own hard day that I had last night, I was laying down thinking, what do I need right now? And the first thing that I thought of was, I just want comfort and I want to be comforted. And I thought, I think that's what so many of us moms do naturally is we tend to, and we care for and we nurture and we comfort our children and our family. And I think that's something that struck me about, you talked about like kind moments of self-care. And I want you to talk about some of the things you share in the book, like kind self-talk and some of these things we can do to comfort ourselves, because this really struck me, Carla. And I'm just going to read this little part from your book. It says, I am not saying self-improvement is a bad thing. It's just a different thing. And when we confuse the two, then everything becomes about trying to improve ourselves, which means we don't get a single moment of our day when we aren't reminded of how we could be doing better. And that is fucking exhausting. I said that because I wanted to say the F word, but also.
Wait, did I have the F word in the book or did you say
oh,
that
you have it. And it's in,
good job, me.
All caps.
That was a well-played F word.
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Thank you.
But the comfort, it's like, I don't want to improve myself. I just want to feel some tenderness and comfort towards myself. So
look, I love everything you just said. And there's two things you said there that are really important to self-compassion. One is you took a moment to say, what do I need, right? That is this moment of curiosity, which is a core compassion practice. Because when we are curious about ourselves and others, we are saying, A, you matter. Like you matter enough that I'm showing up to get interested in what's going on with you. And B, the other thing we're saying is, I'm not scared of what I'm going to find. Yes. So if you're constantly walking around thinking you're a total shit of a parent, actually being curious with yourself can be kind of scary because it's like, oh God, what if I find out that I'm actually really, really legitimately horrible, right? So for some people, compassion is a hard place to start, but if you have a friend who will be compassionate with you, or you can start with other compassion practices, and there are other ones. But I love that you kind of just said to yourself, what do I need? That's a really compassionate place to start. And I think, one of the conversations I had with a lot of my girlfriends during the pandemic is, I'm so worn out, I'm so anxious, I'm so exhausted, and I don't know what will make it better. Right? None of us were like, what's going to fucking fix this? Everything feels so broken and hard. But that's when I started thinking about self-care in a different way, because I feel like so much of self-care is like, eat your vegetables, get your exercise. So it feels like either tending to your basic needs or self-improvement. Go listen to the right podcast, go read the right expert book, go like to some self-improvement course, whatever. And there's no room in there, like just to kind of comfort yourself, take care of yourself. And the way I think about it is, if you had a friend who called you up and they were that mom with twins, maybe, right? Just on the edge of it, can't even handle it. You wouldn't be like, oh, well, have you tried training for a marathon? I think that's what you need right now. Like you wouldn't say that.
Do more.
Do more.
Right.
Do more. Make yourself a better person. And then this will be easier. So I've really leaned into the self-care thing during the pandemic. Here's what this looks like for me. Listening to romances. So I listen to a lot of audiobooks.
I like that.
And I just want a straight up formulaic story with some good sex scenes and like, happy. And I know how it's going to end. It's going to end with everybody being happy because I don't want uncomfortable feelings. I have enough of those on my own. Thank you very much.
Yeah, for real.
So like leaning into the romances, leaning into funny shows with my kids. So I just decided that we're going to end every day laughing. Like that's what I want to do. And that doesn't mean there's not like bitchy fights after that when it's time to get ready for bed. I'm not saying that. But like we've been watching over the course of the pandemic, we went through Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Parks and Recreation, The Office, all these old shows that literally we're just laughing at the end of the day. Also, you guys know about Bluey, right?
Oh, yes.
Well, I don't really, but I do see, I support a mom's Facebook group and there's a bunch of moms on it. And they the moms talk about Bluey. So
Bluey is
tell
amazing.
us
So
about
need to
Bluey.
watch
I
it.
don't know.
For your listeners who don't know, this is a cartoon out of, I think, Australia. So we get the accents we love, right? We get the mocha accent. And
Mocha Mama.
it's about 7 minutes long, each episode. And it's about a family of dogs. And it's mom and dad and two sisters, Bluey and Bingo. And it's just like the shenanigans of their family. And it is loving and hilarious. And somehow, even though the parents are totally into imaginary play in a way that I never was, it doesn't make me feel like a jerk about like
Very relatable.
it is. It's just hilarious. And so this is a preschool cartoon, straight up preschool. And my daughters, who are 12 and 14, and my husband and I, every night we finish with like 1 or 2 episodes of Bluey because it's so stinking
It's
cute.
crazy. I
is.
assumed it was Blue's Clues.
No, oh God, no, ew, no.
I had no idea until this moment.
Nope.
Yeah,
It's
The
just,
moms
you will
talk
love
about
it.
Bluey.
Yeah, it's
can I tell you,
hilarious.
I just think of it as like a little injection of joy.
Mm.
Like, and I just need that. So this is, I also started cross stitching. It's a sort of useless craft, really. Like, and I know that, sorry in advance for all the emails you're going to get from your listeners about that, but maybe it's only useless for me because I haven't figured out how to frame them or do anything with them yet. I don't know how to do that. So they're just laying around, but it just makes me happy. Like, there's no point to it. It just makes me happy. And so for me, self-care is like wrapping up in a cozy blanket, pulling out my cross stitch, and listening to a really cheesy formulaic romance book. And
So great.
it's just what it is. And so what I wish for more mothers, and I know there are mothers out there who don't have the resources or time or support to do this. And if you can't, that's okay. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you don't have what you need right now. Right. But if you do, like, what makes you feel comfy and cozy and kind of held, right? And for different people, it's for different things. And if for you that is running a marathon, that's awesome. Go do it.
Right.
But if you're running a marathon because you feel like you need to punish yourself, like, maybe we could let that go.
I think that would be such a good practice for all of us listening right now to literally just like hit pause and get out your piece of paper and just think about what are the ways that I feel, would comfort me or nurture me, or what favorite romance novels can I start checking out, which you need to give us your recommendations.
Totally. I will.
Okay. But, just to have that in your pocket. So, when you're feeling that, you can lean in.
And it can be like whatever you want it to be. My husband is learning how to play all the Guns N' Roses songs on his ukulele. Oh. So that's like happening in our house. And our vet was telling me that once a week he goes to this like circus place near where we live and he swings on a trapeze.
Oh gosh.
It sounds like horrible to me. I would never want to do that, but he's just like, I'm in the moment and I'm so happy. And I'm like, buddy, you are awesome. Rock. So I want everybody to find their like trapeze moment, something they love to do that just makes them happy. And not everybody has to be a little couch potato like I am. And that's okay.
Yeah. What feels like a relief instead of one more thing to do, or I gotta fix my childhood, or
right,
be trauma informed, whatever it is, that like what feels like a relief for you. And man, oh man, I mean, so many times we're talking or recording a podcast, and that I'm like, man, I wish I would have known this. That the pressure that I felt. I'll tell you a crazy thing. I was a single mother with my oldest, and I had my oldest when I was in college. And if you've been around me for a while, you've heard me say this before, but when I found out I was pregnant and told my parents, my mom cried. And I love her. I hope that you're listening to this, Mom, but she was kind of worried what the community would think about. They're in a small town. And my dad goes, "Are you going to keep it?" And I said, "I am. I wouldn't have told you if I wasn't." That would have been my own story. And he goes, "You're going to do great. Don't fuck it up." And
Dad,
in that moment, well, it was pressure, but
I love him.
Yeah, it felt like he was holding my hand. My dad's a cattle buyer, and he's the Marlboro man, literally. But it was very straightforward. Like, you don't have to do this, young lady. And if you're going to do it right. But a great thing and a terrible thing happened for me is I felt like I had to do everything by myself. That there was something that like, don't fuck it up was to me like, oh my God, nobody's coming for me. And that's not the truth. I wish I would have asked them and more people for help. I needed it.
Yeah.
But also that like, you have a choice in this and you're choosing to do this, you can do it. That like just because you're single, sister, doesn't mean that you can't do this. I did not have the resources. I did finish college. I think all my friends were still going to college, so I just kept going. But in the moment, what I also needed was them to say, you can call us at any time.
Yeah.
That I felt like with the way that they responded, I couldn't ever call them again. The door closed.
Oh.
And I wish every mom knew that there is that phone number on the refrigerator or a mommy baby yoga class or something, that there's someone that I can call in that moment. And that's the warm, cozy blanket, is knowing that there's this podcast that I can listen to and be reminded that I'm not the only one. And I'm going to have a hard day. Sometimes I'm going to be in the flight freeze. Some days I'm going to be overwhelmed, and I'm still an okay mom. And I'm not fucking it up if I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Or if I ask for help.
Oh my God, Ashley, so many beautiful things in what you said there. And a few points I just want to pull out. First of all, just because you're fucking it up, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Right? Like you could like what we are doing here is teaching our children how to be humans in this world. And part of learning how to be a human is learning what it means to screw up really badly and make repairs. Like that's an important teaching thing. It doesn't mean we're teaching our kids how to be perfect, because that's not possible. And the other thing I want to say to all the parents out there, all the moms who don't have parents they can call on for whatever reason, because your parents are dead, or they're not available, or they're struggling with addiction or mental illness, you're not alone. It really, really sucks. And it's a thing to like acknowledge and grieve, and just know that this is part of your story, and you have to just do what you can to find that support. And it does make parenting easier when you have that support, and so many of us don't. And it's just it just sucks, man. And the last thing that I always say is that just because it's hard, like parenting is so hard. It's so hard, even if you have the resources and support and information and helpful parents and all the things, it's stinking hard. And that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong.
Yes.
Like I feel like one of the big lie of social media is that if we are doing parenting right, it will be easy.
Right.
And that's just bullshit. It's just not true. Like there is no easy parenting. It just doesn't exist. And so that's like saying, if we're living a life right, there will be no gravity. And if you're dealing with gravity, you're doing it wrong. It's not true. Parenting is always hard, even when you're doing it right. And so
even the easy days, even the
easy days are hard.
Yeah. Yep. So I would be sad if we didn't bring this topic up, because I know we could talk about this for hours. I just want to like get mochas and like hang out together more regularly. Carla, you're amazing. But let's talk just a teeny bit about boundaries, because when you think, even bringing it to terms of like social media, one of the things I've had to do is watch who I follow, unplug, not follow some of those people on social media, or really, limit when I check in. So for me, that's even my own boundary, is to say I'm, gonna unplug when I feel like that's not the first thing I'm gonna turn to. First of all, Ashley and I talk about this a lot, just not even on the show, just about how we find setting boundaries. We're still learning how to set healthy boundaries, and why it's so hard, and how is setting healthy boundaries an act of self-compassion?
So women are not taught to set boundaries. Women are taught to take care of other people's feelings. And we worry that setting boundaries, which may look like saying no, is not a nice thing, and it's going to make other people feel bad. So one of the biggest challenges for me of parenting is remembering that I am not responsible for how my children feel, and I'm not responsible for how other people feel. This does not come naturally to me. As a child growing up in a very dysfunctional home, I was like responsible for everybody's feelings, and I was constantly trying to make people feel good. So this is a very, very hard thing for me to do, that I'm constantly remembering. But what I can remember is that there are ways to set boundaries, that you can do it in a kind, respectful way. And so what I think about when I think about setting boundaries, for me, it looks like making choices about who I'm going to spend time with. And there was a really interesting thing that just happened today that I was reading about before we recorded this, that Glennon Doyle and Abby Wambach have their podcast, We Can Do Hard Things. And they were about to have a guest come on. And as they were setting up the tech check, the guest and her husband apparently treated one of their staff members really poorly. And they said, we're not going to record this. It's done. You can like go on their podcast and see it. And some people might say, well, that's cancel culture and that's terrible. And I think what I see is women making decisions about who they want to spend time with and whose voices they want to elevate. And to me, that may not seem compassionate to the other person, but I think it is compassionate to themselves about what they're exposing themselves to. And so I think the choices we can make again are which are the parents you're going to spend time with, right? So if there are parents at the playground or parents at the parking lot or parents wherever, that you notice that when you spend time with them, you end up doubting yourself or feeling less than or feeling insecure or whatever it is, it doesn't mean they're bad people. That's not what it means. All it means is that for some reason they push your buttons. And that may be more about your buttons than they're pushing, which is fine. But you can just make a choice not to hang out with them, right? It doesn't make you a jerk. It doesn't make them bad people. It's just you making a choice to hang out in your car, hang out on the other side of the playground. The same is true with social media accounts. Like I unfollow most parenting advice social media accounts because I notice that advice doesn't inspire or empower me. It makes me feel like a shitty parent. There are friends who I really enjoy in person, but what they post on social media is all of their kids' achievements. Right. I call them the marathon pictures because it's the picture of the sweaty mom with the big medal around her neck, having just finished the marathon, and she's got her arm around each of her kids. And for some reason, those pictures trigger the shit out of me. They push all my shitty mom buttons that if I was a better mom, I would be doing all these things. And so I just unfollow, and I still want to be friends with these people, but for some reason their marathon picture just send me into a spiral. So I think setting boundaries is not always easy, but it can be really, really helpful. And it's about making choices about who you're sort of letting into your awareness, your space, and recognizing that this is compassion for yourself. And the more compassionately we treat ourselves, the more compassionately we'll be able to show up for the people in our lives who matter.
I love that.
One of my favorite things I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I think of it like just remembering that that's another way to tend to our needs is to be able to, say yes to this, say no to that, invite that in, or say it's not for me right now, and that's okay.
And you can look, there are ways to say no to people that make it easier. For example, I was on some committee at my daughter's school at one point, and I asked a friend if she wanted to be on the committee, and she was like, yeah, when are the meetings? And I was like, oh, they're in the evenings. And she said, sorry, I just don't join. I don't do anything in the evenings because right now I'm tired and I have the kids at home and it's too stressful. And the fact that she was like, it's a rule for me, I don't know, that could have been a total lie or not. It doesn't really matter. It made me feel better. She wasn't rejecting me. It was just a rule. And something else that somebody said to me recently that was so wise is just this reminder that, like, it's not the season. Maybe it's not your season right now. This idea that we all have seasons in life. And when you have little kids at home or even kids at home, or when you're just tired because, like, democracy's failing and the world is falling apart and it's all a dumpster fire and it makes you tired, maybe that's not your season to do all the things. So I think, and that's okay. Like, let that be okay. And when I just want to hop back for a minute to, like, the playground scenario where you're spending time with folks who, you end up feeling like crap. I think a lot of parents feel like come away from those scenarios thinking, I feel like shit because I'm legitimately not as accomplished or calm or organized or put together as they are. And I would hope parents could kind of flip that script on themselves and just say, that's not the vibe that works for me right now. And it's just an acknowledgement of what it is. I mean, I used to take my daughters to ballet class on Sunday mornings, and there would be moms there. I'm not even kidding you. 9 a.m., I'm rolling in dirty yoga pants and a t-shirt, and these moms are there in, like, little black dresses. I'm not even joking with their
I know that mom.
There were like 8 of them, and I was like, I literally didn't look this good at my own wedding. Like, I don't
even have a little black dress. Where did you get that? That's what I would say. Where did you get that?
You're just freaking lucky I showed up in matching flip-flops this morning. Like, and it really triggered me. It was like, I don't use that word lightly, but it was, like, really upsetting. And I would ruminate it on all day. Like, what's wrong with me? I need to be more feminine. I need to dress fancier. I need to, like, get my shit together. And finally I was like, or I could just have my husband take the girls to ballet and that could solve the problem. Right. So that's setting a boundary. And these women didn't care. They didn't know me. They didn't want to talk to the crazy yoga pant lady.
That's right.
So
knowing what you need in that moment, asking yourself, what do I need now in this season, is also a way to set that boundary. You are not a shitty parent, people, right? Thank you. Seriously, this book is one, there's just a few that I like recommend, especially to mothers. I'm adding this to the list, Carla. It uplifted me today. It's beautiful. I love just your humor, the phrasing, the way you write. It's just really beautiful. So thank you for that.
Well, you guys are awesome. And I just have to throw in there, before you let me give myself a shout out, I have to throw in there that I'm so grateful for the energy and the vibe you guys put out in the world, because it's what moms need. And I just really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carla.
So good. That's, the reason we brought the show back. We brought it out at a time when we learned a lot, and then we were in different seasons in our life and we had to take a break, and now it just feels so right. So it feels good to be seen. So thank you for that. So tell us, first of all, where can our listeners learn more about you and get this book?
So I hang out on the internet at carlanaumburg.com. And I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. And you can buy the book at your local independent bookseller, online retailer, and it's available as a paperback and a audiobook and an e-version.
Fabulous. Oh, wow, great. We will share all of those links in the show notes. And before you go, favorite romance novels. Let's do this.
Okay, my favorite one it's called The Hating Game. It's so stinking cute, but it's got some really spicy sex scenes. So if you are not into the spicy sex scenes, don't get that book. And like the other ones I really like.
Get it, girls. Go ahead and get it.
The Hating Game. Don't watch the movie. They made a movie out of it. It's terrible. Don't do it. Also, Christina Lauren. And it's actually two authors, and that's their pen name. They write together. And their books are like less spicy, but really stinking cute. And so Christina Lauren, I like her stuff, their stuff
fun.
Too.
I've got to have lighthearted stuff. I don't sleep well. And so I get up in the middle of the night. Once I wake up, then I just put on an audiobook. And I need some stuff that's a little lighthearted.
Oh no! So I have a different strategy for when I can't sleep at night, which is all the time. I get insanely boring books, and they put me to sleep. So,
me too.
Not to offend your listeners,
Barack Obama's book.
So Chernow's biography of Alexander Hamilton, right? Oh my God, put me right to sleep. And also right now I am working my way through this crazy long history of the building of the Brooklyn Bridge. It's called the Great Bridge.
Oh God, I'm falling asleep right now.
I legit don't care about my father-in-law is reading this for funsies. Like, this is a good time for him. And I'm like, this is what I put on to fall asleep. So the Great Bridge, David McCullough, who's actually, rest his soul, he recently passed away, was like a gift to humanity, right? He wrote amazing stuff, but he wrote like a 15-hour book about the Brooklyn Bridge. So
I'm going to read it.
Yeah. Stick in your little sleep headphone.
I'm going to not read it. I'm going to listen to it.
Sound comforting.
And I'm going to forget most of it.
No, because these it checks all the boxes. Like,
that's right. Get you to sleep.
It's a boring subject. Nothing happens. Nobody's having sex on the bridge. I mean, they obviously are, but somehow they didn't make it into the book. So, it'll put you right to sleep.
Okay, I love
it. Sorry, McCullough.
I love it.
So much for the book, for this conversation, and just for who you are. It's been awesome.
You guys are awesome. Let's stay in touch.
Grateful.
Thank you so much for listening today. We have some book giveaways to share with you. If you are listening to this episode as it's coming out November 2022, you can win signed copies of Carla's 2 books, You Are Not a Shitty Parent, How to Practice Self-Compassion and Give Yourself a Break, and How to Stop Losing Your Shit with Your Kids. For your chance to win, you have several options. Every time you do the following, you will be entered to win in a giveaway, and we will announce the winner on Tuesday, November 15th, 2022. For your chance to win, go follow Carla Naumburg on Instagram. Go follow Mindful Mama Movement Podcast on Instagram. Leave the podcast a review and rate our show on iTunes. And you can also go leave Carla a book review on Amazon. If you do 1, 2, 3, or 4 of those requests, you will be entered into our drawing 1, 2, 3, or 4 times for your chance to win. Thank you so much for helping us get the word out about the podcast. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. Share it with your mama friends, and we will see you in the next show.